All right, so now we're actually going to add points into a leaflet map. So we talked about the different ways that we do points. There might be markers, there might be text, there might be circles. So first we're going to look at just doing markers. So I have here my code that you're seeing. First of all, let's just save it without doing anything, and we just load it up, and it's just an empty thing. We saw this with adding the tile set, so we know roughly what this is about. We know that somewhere these all have points, but these are just images that are being loaded, so we don't have any points on this map yet. So the first way to do it is to add a marker. A marker is generally always the easiest thing that is done in these mapping libraries, and Leaflet has their little thing in their documentation that has this example right there. L marker, you give it some coordinates, and you do add to map. Okay, boom, done. Here I've given it some coordinates that it might even be the original. No, I just picked these by going to geojson.io, emptying my cache there, and going to London and pressing the marker down. And I grabbed the coordinates. Now we should look real quick. The coordinates I have here are not in the same order that they gave here. And this is what I've referred to probably like a frickin' dozen times now. The latitude and longitude are flipped. Leaflet does it in latitude, longitude. Meanwhile, GeoJSON and MapLibra do it in longitude, latitude. Something important to know, there's a reason I'm drilling that into your head over and over, because it will screw you up. You will get these in the wrong order, and it should be something that you know that you have to look at whenever you get or you're working with some mapping system. Do they do longitude, latitude, or longitude, longitude? Because obviously your stuff will be completely different if you flip it around. I mean, let's just do it in geojson.io. Let's take this one and make it so now we're looking at it flipped and try to find out where the heck is this point. Okay, the point is somewhere here off the coast of Somalia. Like, it's totally different because that's 51.0 as opposed to 0.51. So now if I just reverse that again, okay, there, it's back in the right place. Important thing to note with Leaflet. Okay, so we just followed the documentation and added that. We refresh, boom, there's our point. It's showing a marker. That marker is basically an image, a default image that Leaflet has somewhere, and it loads that as the marker. We're gonna, later on, we're gonna look at how to change that. It's not like a super straightforward thing, but it is down here in the documentation for Leaflet. Their first one there says icon. So the icon is like the image that's being used for the marker. And then there's a bunch of other stuff here. There's opacity and some other things, but we're not really going to look at these yet. We're going to come back eventually to this information about how you change markers, but we're going to move on for now. And we're going to do circles. So circle is another way to represent a point. And this one, we actually have some options, okay? So let's go look at the documentation for a circle in Leaflet. Okay, so here we are at the circle documentation. And we see here there's another basic example. L circle, we pass some coordinates in latitude, longitude format. And then we have this little object. This is a little options object where we can say a radius and give it a number. And then we add it to the map. Okay, so I've actually added more options and I've broken it onto some lines so we can read it more easily. I have a color, I have a fill color, a fill opacity, and a radius. Okay, so the radius we already saw. What are the rest of these, and how do I know that these are options? Well, they're here in the Leaflet documentation. They're not really that clear. When you look, you don't see them immediately. All you see is radius, and it says it's in meters, by the way, which is kind of good to know. But we have to click this little thing to open it, and we see that options were inherited from path, whatever that is, and we can see there's stroke, color, weight, opacity, and there's little descriptions of what these are, right? So when I give color, it's actually the stroke color. So down here, there's fill color, and that's the color inside the circle. Okay, so fill opacity is the opacity inside the circle. So when we give it, when I'm giving it color, that's going to be the stroke or the border. And then the fill color is going to be the inside, and the fill opacity is going to be the inside. But all of these options can all be given inside this little object. So let's save it and let's reload it. Okay. There's our circle. So our circle is there, and let's just change the radius here so that we get something. We see that it changes. Boom, it's twice as big. Now, kind of cool, when I zoom out, it stays 1,000 meters. So the marker is always the same size and this, like, visually, but the circle changes size visually because it stays the same size geometrically, like it's 500 meters always, which is really cool to know. So those are our two basic different types of things in Leaflet. And the most important concept to take away here is one, that it's all in documentation, and two, that we can pass this options object, and that sometimes the options that are available aren't there just like showing. You have to open this little additional thing, and then you run into all these different options. And there's tons of them. We're not going to be going over all of them in this course. Some of those are just going to be specialized to take on to specific uses that you have for them. So that's basically it. We also have the circle marker. We're not going to worry about that. I've never really had to use this. I think the circle marker is just something that, like, it's like the circle, but it stays the same size as you zoom in and out. Let's just like add it anyway and just see what, I believe that's what it is. I've never really had to use it. So let's circle, and yeah, so it's big, and you can see it resizes to be the same size as I zoom in and out. Not something you're really going to run into, so don't worry about it. Again, but the core is just those options. So that's pretty much it. All we had to do was add a coordinate, add some options, and we got our circle, we got our marker, and now we're off on the next one to adding lines.